Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest monologue. And this evening, I'm going to talk about tourism. The a few weeks ago, when the Kenya shilling started appreciating, obviously Kenyans were very happy about it. And typical some white supremacist was on Twitter saying, um, this is very bad for the tourism industry because it's going to become very expensive for tourists to come to Kenya, and Kenya will lose out on tourism dollars. And my comment on that was that I look forward to the day when Kenya as a country will not need these strange creatures called tourists to come here. And I use the term strange creatures. Um, as typical of Kenyan audiences, philosophically we are like intellectually stunted, and very few people understood what I said. And one person actually asked me that, could you please do a monologue about this? So here it is. Now we need to understand tourism. Tourism per se is not a problem, and I don't claim to have a problem with tourism. The problem I have is the way we practice tourism. And I'd like to start, before I go further, with a quote from probably the greatest Pan-African scholar that I've read, Walter Rodney, the late historian, native of Guyana. And he said in 1973, he said international imperialism was threatening to transform Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania into wildlife republics. Every effort was made to attract tourists to come and look at animals, and the animals assumed priorities higher than those of human beings. A very profound statement. Um, 50 years later, it's true, 100%. And Kenya, because we are so obsessed with these tourists, and when I say tourists, the fact is we have to face that we are obsessed with white tourists, Western tourists, European tourists. And even go around the conservancies and so-called conservation areas, people say, tunataka kufanya hivi ndio wazungu wakuje. That means so that white people can come. So we have to keep that in mind as I talk about this. It's never about us, the Kenyans. Conservation, wildlife, national parks, conservation areas are never about us. We are sort of the byproduct there. Never for us or about us. It's about getting the white Western tourists. And there are two upshots of this. The needs of white people and the dreams of white people. These warped childhood dreams of Africa that you see Meryl Streep and Robert Redford's movie Out of Africa, Born Free, these kind of things, various other movies made about wildlife movies made out of Africa. That's the dream. That's what they pay for. And I've worked closely with a lot of tourism organizations, and I've been actually to a camp where guests were type A, sort of 3%ers, paying $1,200 per person per night. And the theme of the camp was like what Karen Blixen had back in whenever she lived in Kenya. The camp staff were dressed like that. They were not allowed to have mobile phones because, back in 1920s or wherever it was, there were no mobile phones. So you're not allowed to have mobile phones in camp. You don't speak unless you're spoken to, etc. It's the whole Karen Blixen experience, except with the air-conditioned chilled champagne and all these modern conveniences for the guests. And this shows that we sell myths. We as Kenyans, it's a shame that we are so ashamed of our reality, beautiful as it is, that we choose to sell myths and ancient history because we think that's what's best about our country. And it spills off into other sectors. Look at sport. What sports get corporate sponsorship? Golf. Magical Kenya Open. Magical Kenya would never sponsor football because that's black people's sport, right? So it's golf, and then you have random giraffes walking across the golf course, and that this is supposed to make this look really amazing. What else do we sponsor? Safari Rally. It's about to happen shortly. Even a bank, one of our biggest local banks, which has just declared zero dividend for its shareholders, is sponsoring rally teams, because that's a white sport. White people are coming to see it. It's important because it's a white sport. Nobody sponsors I don't know, hockey, athletics, that kind of thing. Even the corporate sponsors of athletics, it's only athletes that have achieved the global icon status like Eliud Kipchoge who get now serious corporate sponsorship in Kenya after they get the international one. And this is all bleeding from that tourism thing, that we are meant to be props. We are just part of the attraction. We're not people. And I've had the dubious privilege of being in a tour group with some foreign students, and we were in a bunch of tour vans. They're all exactly the same. The driver guides were all dressed exactly the same. They spoke exactly the same. They all wore safari boots. And we stopped at some place. It was a viewpoint. And we got out. We were 4 vehicles. And because of my training in field biology, I'm more observant than most people. So we got out of the car, enjoyed the view, took photos, etc. When we turned back to go to the cars, I had no idea which one I had stepped out from. I looked at the drivers. I had no idea who was our driver. They were all dressed the same, and all I was seeing was the back of his head while we were on the way anyway. Never got to know his name. And then they knew us. So they were telling, oh, you are in car number 3, you are in car number 2, and all that kind of thing. But this shows what we are doing. We destroy our souls the way we practice tourism. Why are all tour guides? And this question is addressed to tour guides. And I hope I can get some answers in the comments. Why do you all wear those brown and green clothes? Why can't you do tour guiding in your red t-shirt, Arsenal t-shirt, or Manchester United t-shirt? Why? Why must you wear those brown fatigue, those brown khaki clothes? Why do you all wear safari boots? Surely sneakers are more comfortable. Why don't you wear those? It's because you are playing into some myth. Some myth. You're not being yourself. You're being part of the landscape. Why are all tour vehicles painted green and brown? I mean, I've sat in meetings where some tourism investor said we must have this core area where only green 4-wheel drive vehicles are allowed. And this, we were discussing the Masai Mara management plan some years ago. And I immediately was taken aback. I said, who's going to hire? If I want to bring my kids along, I'm not going to come in a green 4x4 vehicle. I do have a 4x4 vehicle, but it's red. But that means you have to go through these tour farms, pay those huge premiums, and it's to keep you out. So you fellow from Nairobi with your blue Land Cruiser or yellow Land Rover or whatever, we don't want you there, or in your white 4x4 vehicle. So this is the problem. Until we learn that this stuff, this heritage belongs to us, it's useless. It's useless. And we want people to come and see it. But what if I had my way, what I'd like is visitors, not tourists. Visitors are people who come and intellectually engage with the landscape, with the people, with the country. Tourists are those with 5-minute attention spans. There's an elephant, click pictures. There's a giraffe, click pictures. Doesn't know even the name of his tour guide who spent the 1 week with him. Doesn't ever get to feel or understand or hear or taste Kenya. And those who have been fortunate to go to other countries, one of my most pleasant tourism experiences was in India, because I didn't go to any place and find them making food special for me that they thought would please me. They made their food, their tea, etc., which I happen to enjoy so much. And Even if you go to the highest class 5-star hotels in India, they serve Indian food. Which 5-star hotel in Kenya serves Kenyan food? They all serve what they think is French food, Italian food, American food. And they serve what the American was running away from in America anyway, to come to taking a break from, to come here. And that's the problem we have. We want to have a swimming pool in a lodge in the middle of the arid north of Kenya. No, if that guy wants to swim, visit Mombasa on the way or in or on the way out. He can swim back at home. He's come to the arid north to see gerenooks and elephants and other dryland species. But we still keep trying to create this elite myth. It's a childish myth that we keep trying to create, and that's why we keep using this silly tagline, magical. Kenya is not magical. Kenya is beautiful. Kenya is complex. Kenya is sophisticated, but it's not magical. It's real. And that's what we need to learn. And that's why I know we'll never get this right as long as we have that strange creature called Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife. If we want to get it straight, we have to remove tourism from there. Tourism is a byproduct of conservation, a byproduct, not the purpose of conservation. So like to explain this more, break this down a bit, when a farmer raises livestock, he raises beef cattle, for beef. When they're slaughtered and you get the beef, you get byproducts like the hide and the horns and the hooves. Those are byproducts. If your farmer is a dairy farmer, he raises cattle for milk. After they get slaughtered, etc., then people get the other byproducts like the hides. So no one raises cattle for hides. So we cannot conserve our environment for tourism. The environment is for our health, our heritage, and its intrinsic value. Until we understand that, we'll get nowhere. And we'll keep doing stupid things because we think a tourist likes it. And probably the depth of this intellectual failure was when the former minister, Mr. Najib Balala, actually constituted a task force to look at hunting and consumptive use of wildlife, because some tourism investors had suggested that guests might like to eat game meat in their luxury hotels. By the way, this is the same thing they call bushmeat when black people eat it in camps and villages. They call it bushmeat. But the white people wanted game meat in hotels. And Balala actually constituted a task force to look at it. Thankfully, it didn't succeed because of the noise various activists, myself included, made. But that shows how far backwards we will bend to do what we think these strange creatures called tourists want. It's high time we started soliciting for visitors and not tourists. As the safari rally comes, I hasten to remind you the speed limit for black Kenyans in wildlife areas is 40 kilometers per hour, and KWS has signs. The white people will be driving at 200 kilometers an hour because they're white and they're tourists and we want their dollars and we think they're more important than us.